Indoors or outdoors, becoming a stage for free speech.
Who is OWS in bed with? Another week has gone by with the 99 percenters occupying St Valentine's Day, having a bit of cultural fun in their workshops while contemplating the upcoming U.S. presidential elections. So this week, we delve in for A President for 99 Percenters to probe the popular take on the elections. From New York with Love, an overview of St. Valentine's Day's rallies and the fun side of OWS. Charlotte, Tampa, and Chicago to tell the story of popular protests against the 1%ers during the Democratic and Republican conventions. And our weekly chat with the notables of the movement.
Our city of Charlotte actually had no laws against camping on public property.
Enjoy.
A person dependent upon U.S. corporate media for information would think the 2012 U.S. presidential election is a contest between two parties. There is little awareness of the alternative American parties, Green, Justice, Socialist, and others. Yet Justice Party presidential candidate Rocky Anderson recently appeared at a 99% coalition forum in San Francisco and bluntly stated, "What we have in this country is a government of the wealthy." Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein and other alternative candidates have also appeared at Occupy locations around the nation, expressing solidarity with protesters and representing possibilities other than the status quo. Participants in the Occupy movement are politically savvy and well aware that there are major problems with an American electoral system held hostage by corporate money and lobbyists, built upon a charade of false debates and manufactured fear. The real issues are inequality, corporate wrongdoing, ecosystem destruction, a burgeoning police state along with endless war, and unsustainable lifestyles. Those issues are being raised by hard-working participants in creative, peaceful, democratic assemblies across the land, not in the political debates carefully crafted by Madison Avenue and Wall Street. Viewpoints in the American awakening about the electoral process are as diverse as the people involved. Some say elections are no longer relevant, that voting is political theater which cannot change the system, that elections can be easily rigged with electronic voting machines. Others say Occupy political parties join up and change the system from within. People involved in the movement will make individual choices as to electoral participation, knowing diverse tactics are necessary. Keep in mind, though, that the Occupy movement is about taking down an unjust system and reinventing it. The movement is aligned internationally, and it's about the possibilities of a future. It is about creating alternate spaces, communities. It is borderless, leaderless. It is about real hope, real change, and there is little chance it will join the system it stands outside of.
When Occupy Charlotte began, our city of Charlotte actually had no laws against camping on public property. But they have since changed that and passed new laws that they're referring to as the DNC ordinances. I think that Occupy Charlotte did have some impact on the new laws. What they ultimately passed is slightly less restrictive than the original ones that they proposed, but it's been eye-opening to watch the process and to see how far our city is willing to go to restrict free speech, and it's been really sad. These new laws empower the city manager with no oversight from elected officials or from anyone to declare an extraordinary event, for example, like the DNC. And during an extraordinary event, things like backpacks and scarves and coolers and markers are now prohibited items. And worse, the police are empowered to divine the intent of people. I was present when the police were explaining to the city of Charlotte why it was that they were asking for such really restrictive new laws. And I could see from their presentation that they had studied protests in other places like Seattle and Miami and Denver and Minneapolis. But what they learned from studying those other protests was all about tactics. So their presentation was full of diagrams of things like tripods and sleeping dragons. And what they didn't learn from studying other protests is that we're very creative people. So what they ended up with was laws that ban things like cans of soda because that might be used as a weapon. And these new laws also banned camping, which resulted in Occupy Charlotte's eviction by the police. But the city created this very broad language, and they left it to the police to interpret, which resulted in arrests that we're now challenging in the court system. The new law defines camping as storing personal property and sleeping in or preparing to sleep in tents or shelters, but tents themselves are not illegal. So we had removed all personal property, left nothing that could be construed as for living purposes. And so we had voluntarily complied with the new DNC ordinances. And still we were arrested, and police removed everything from the Occupy Charlotte occupation site, and they threw it all away. I had realized about a week prior to the eviction that the police might have very different interpretations of the new laws than either Occupy Charlotte or the city council or the city attorney. And so I'd been trying to create a place where we could have some dialogue or at least ask some questions. And for days in advance, I was told that the police would come speak to us, but each time it was pushed back, and ultimately it never happened.
We're here today to longer rule. Carried interest. It's not ownership. So the banks get to have their cake and eat it too.
OWS protesters joined Occupy the SEC outside the Federal Reserve Bank of New York to send a message to the Fed and the SEC. Protect the public, not the banks. Occupy the SEC is a collective of lawyers and financial industry experts who believe the Volcker Rule is important to the future of the banking industry and must be strongly enforced to keep the financial system fair, transparent, and sustainable.
We're gonna beat back the racist attacks. We're gonna beat back the racist attacks.
OWS was one of the groups allied with Muslims at a CAIR rally highlighting NYPD and CIA targeting of the Muslim community without evidence of wrongdoing and with little regard for legal prohibitions on ethnic and religious profiling. The Rally for Justice and March on Police Plaza demanded a police department that is accountable to the public, which funds it by paying taxes. The NYPD is watching us, but who is watching the NYPD? The People's Puppet Guild of Occupy Wall Street has been busy performing their new skit welcoming people to Neighborhood Heights, a town made of ideals and people looking for a better world. The Puppet Guild has been involved in many actions, encouraging people to take the initiative to make the change they wish to see in the world, to look at every day as a new day to do something, to join organizations working for change and work to make all voices heard. Valentine's Day was celebrated by Occupy groups across the world. Occupy Oakland staged their Make Love Not War march to express their love for one another and their beautiful city. Real love can't be bought or sold, does not hurt anyone or pollute the planet. Marchers shared flowers, candy and other treats along with much singing and dancing, a welcome respite from the brutal confrontations with authorities in the weeks preceding. Also on Valentine's Day,
This is an alternative to violence. is to stay in bed and grow your hair.
Inspired by John Lennon and Yoko Ono's famous 1969 Bed-In, OWS protesters, RevPlay, launched their newest campaign game, Who Are You in Bed With? An invitation for peaceful revolution, love over money, a bed out in the public squares, open to all and aimed at bringing conversations usually had behind closed doors out into the open. Questioning politicians and government, who are you in bed with? The Valentine's Day was a prelude to a worldwide event on March 3rd, Bed In, Bed Out, Revolution All About. OWS has been busy as bees, and as spring approaches, the buzz gets louder.
Occupy Wall Street's a coming, and you don't want us to leave you behind.
My participation in Occupy has been as an artist, and I've been encouraging people to use the voice of art making to express themselves. So the tent that I was in was the Occupy Charlotte art studio tent. I had taken away all personal belongings, and the only thing that remained in that tent was art supplies, paint and markers and crayons. And the police came and tore the tent down around us, and I was arrested while making art with a lap full of crayons. 6 of us were arrested that day just for the Occupy Charlotte art studio tent, which I think is just tragic. I also think it illustrates how desperate and fearful our city officials are. They really don't know what to do about Occupy. We had been speaking at city council meetings, and I continue to point out that cities all over the United States are trying to legislate protest away, and it's not working. I suggested that they try something different, that they try dialogue. But in the end, fear won out. And the new laws in place for our city that have just gone into effect and will be in effect for the Democratic National Convention are the very definition of a police state. Charlotte is home to Duke Energy, one of the largest energy companies, as well as the corporate headquarters for 2 of the 4 largest U.S. banks, Wells Fargo and Bank of America. And our Charlotte city leaders were fond of calling Charlotte the Wall Street of the South up until Occupy began, and they've backed away from that phrase lately, but we're not letting them forget it. We've been very aware since Occupy Charlotte began that our physical location in the city of Charlotte means we are deeply connected to the upcoming Democratic National Convention. We've been busy here with lots of other things, but we are constantly aware that the DNC will be here. And I've heard many people inside Occupy Charlotte refer to us as the stewards of this area, holding space for the many people who are expected to arrive here in September to protest at the DNC. And when someone in the mainstream media here heard that, they expressed surprise that we'd be planning for protests at the Democratic convention. And I think that illustrates the confusion. Our media here is used to placing events and people in one of 2 polarized categories, either Republican or Democratic, and they're having a hard time breaking out of that paradigm and seeing Occupy for what it really is.
In the United States, well-heeled delegates attending the national conventions of both the Democratic and Republican parties will select their respective champions in the contest for its presidential office. The first convention, the Republican Convention, will occur late this coming summer in the by-then humid city of Tampa, a city of more than 300,000 located in the state of Florida on the southeast coast of America. The second, the Democratic Convention, takes place the following week in the same humid climate characteristic of the southeastern United States. a much larger city and a major banking center, the city of Charlotte in the state of North Carolina. Both cities' conservative governments expect the burgeoning Occupy movement to be far more than merely evident, with freezing winter temperatures just a collective memory. So much so that the U.S. federal government has poured $50 million tax-paid dollars into both of these metro areas' police forces as a direct preventative response to demonstrations. Additional emergency laws have been enacted. For exercising one's right to freely assemble and redress a public grievance, one can be arrested, or worse, for wearing an anonymous Guy Fawkes mask, a scarf, or, to insinuate that self-defense would be needed, a helmet. Is this the new America? Not quite. Americans have always been a contentious people domestically and not afraid to use the right granted by the country's own constitution, no matter how harshly police agencies react.
Your children can't have the chance to develop whatever talents they have.
Witness another political convention of well-heeled delegates, this one taking place more than 40 years ago in Chicago, Illinois, when 10,000 protesters attempted to express what was called a celebration of life during America's Vietnam War and rejected the political machine which was killing so many. A group among them theatrically indicted the elite that it did not matter who held what office, and soon announced Pegasus for their candidate, which was an actual pig. They were met by 23,000 police, who then rioted. The police, not the helmetless protesters. All in the shadow of another convention of sorts occurring in May 2012. The leaders of the 8 major industrialized countries meeting in Chicago. The response in Chicago by both law enforcement and the Occupy movement seems likely to determine, at least on the streets of the U.S., what happens later in the year in Tampa and Charlotte.
Occupy Charlotte has a wonderful mixture of people participating. Some people have never before participated in our political system or in any type of activism, and then there are others who have been activists for years. But the real hallmark for me, the stunning thing that I'm seeing inside of Occupy, is the understanding of interconnectedness. And I mean that in a lot of different levels. We're seeing the way that economic injustice and the corruption of our political system is connected to all the other issues that we care about. And we're seeing the power of interconnection with each other. People who may live in the same place but have never met before and are learning not only how much we have in common, but how empowering and effective it is when we work together. And I see a shift in our understanding of our place in the world, which for many of the people I know began with the U.S. invasion in Iraq and the protests that were here when that happened. But the deep understanding of how connected we are to the rest of the world has grown dramatically since the start of Occupy Wall Street. I think many of us understand Occupy as a movement that began in other places in the world, and that in the U.S. we are picking up the flag that was born in Tunisia and Egypt and Libya and Syria and so many other places. The Charlotte occupation site is bordered by 2 parks. One of them is dedicated to Gandhi, and the other has a memorial to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. For me, that's a constant reminder also of our interconnection to those people who have gone before us in efforts to create true change in the world. And so that's what I mean whenever I use the phrase, we are the 99%. And that's what I don't think the majority of our media understands yet about Occupy, our awakening to the reality of our interconnectedness in so many ways. And so we're, of course, still in the planning stages and making those connections with many other groups who are also doing advanced planning for what's going to happen here in September during the Democratic National Convention. And there are lots of ideas on the table, and I'm sure new ones will emerge in the future. One of the things I'm personally really excited about right now is the idea that we might hold a shadow convention. I think the timing might be right. Occupy Wall Street will be almost a year old by then, and I think that 1 year mark could be a wonderful place for us to start creating and refining possible solutions to the problems we're protesting. I love the idea of Occupy moving from a place where we're reacting to events and into one where we craft solutions together and do it in a way that takes advantage of the creativity that the process of direct democracy really supports and encourages.